All right, so this is just sort of a quick demonstration about some VDL stuff and some of the things that I've found that that would be useful in your preparation and sort of in the actual writing of the parts. So I'll just sort of give you a quick little rundown on this. You'll see that I've got here the file that we spoke about and that we've coordinated and got onto your machine, the Sibelius 7 Sound / VDL bundle. Now what I recommend is just tossing this maybe over here in your dock, just so that way you can always know where it is. You don't have to go digging through your folder, but that's just a personal preference. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up, and I've already launched Sibelius, so it'll open up into the file. And we've already spoken about how it loads with this default instrument stave that we can get rid of. But so let's go ahead. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of instruments. And you want to make sure that we're using the VDL template, nothing else, or a Sibelius 7 template. If you have to, you can use something else, but really the majority of what you should need, if not everything, should be inside these two templates. You can also use the search function, like if I wanted to find a marimba, here are my options, and it'll show me that within the VDL template, which is nice. So I'm going to go ahead and just add, for example, marimba. I'm going to do vibes, and we'll just say that for now. Okay, so I'm going to hit that. Now they've added those to my score. I can go ahead and get rid of the default, so I'm going to go ahead and do that by double clicking, delete that, hit OK. So now I've got just my two instruments that I've added. Now something that you'll need to do, just as a precaution, is you want to make sure that you audition each one of these instruments when you first put them in. You'll notice in my mixer down here, they're already loaded properly using Contact 5 player and then the actual marimba sound Contact 5. But what you want to do is just solo those just to make sure that they work properly, and also to make sure that they load. Sometimes, and this is just a bug that they've got to work out, sometimes they do not load. So before you do anything, you want to make sure that you audition the instrument. If for some reason it's not correct, all you need to do is click on this top box, go to Auto, and then in the VDL sound set, you'll go and find the correct instrument, and so on. So this was marimba, so I'm going to just do that. Marimba, anything's fine. Once again, audition it. You'll see that it loads it. Now we're in business. Okay. Now I've also, for the purposes of this demonstration, I am using a MIDI keyboard, which if you can get your hands on one, it makes it incredibly more beneficial to have one. If not, you can use the built-in keyboard inside Sibelius under View and Keyboard. You can use that to audition sounds. So to audition sounds and to audition an instrument, same thing applies regardless of VDL or non-VDL. So this is the same as you're used to. I'm going to click on marimba, and same thing. Okay. So just like a quick little thing in VDL, the barred instruments are pretty straightforward. Standard notation stuff applies. Alright, so now let's say that where it sort of gets a little tricky in the things where you'll want to you'll end up spending a little bit more time, and really the ultimate purpose for this video is with auxiliary things, things like bass drum, tam-tam, suspended cymbals, any of that kind of stuff. The proper way, I don't say the proper way, but the way that I've found to be most beneficial for me is to have an instrument stave that is strictly just for playback purposes. And you may have 1 or 2 or 9 or 10 or however many. So anyways, you'll have a ton of playback staves, and you will have for example, like the marimba part, you'll want to have notated that he maybe on beats 3 and 4 he has a suspended cymbal roll. So let's experiment with that rather than having a separate part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another instrument here, and there are cymbal rack combos, and you can find out more about those inside the VDL maps file that I gave to you. It'll open up in whatever your PDF reader is. Preview for me. And I'm just going to do a search for combo, and it will bring me the options for the cymbal rack combos. And you'll see that there are a number of different specific notation types and note head types, which are important because these will play different samples within the library. So anyways, you'll want to keep this for reference, and most of the guys I know just write with this thing open all the time because they're constantly referencing it. So let me go back into Sibelius, and we're going to add, we can use a rack combo. You can also use just basic like suspended cymbal, and you'll find those at a number of places, and I've actually got to track them down. So I'm just gonna, I'll do nice 20-inch Constantinople, do the auto. Alright, I'm gonna hit OK. Once again, like we talked about, sort of a precaution. I'm gonna pull up the mixer. You'll see I need to hit this little icon over here to get these things up. You'll see that it is not loaded. So this is the exact purpose of this exercise. So I'm going to test the sound. You see now it's loaded it properly. So now I can go in here and I'm going to audition these sounds. And I'm going to use the onboard keyboard just for demonstration purposes. So anyways, you'll see as I'm going through, each one of these keys represents a different sample. I'm looking for something that's going to be a suspended cymbal roll, perhaps maybe even with a crescendo. I'm having a little difficulty here. Well, you know what, I may have added the wrong instrument, so let me go back and add. Let me try this. Let me get rid of this instrument now. Go back into the mixer. Audition him. Alright, so we'll try this again. I normally use the rack combo. For reference, but so let me do that because I'm not used to this. Sorry for that little mix up. Alright. Once again, I will audition the instrument. Alright. So, let's try this once more. So, alright, so you'll see that each one of these keys loads a different sample, and I'm pressing it. You'll see it from the display. So, each one of these three, like for example, suspended cymbal crescendo, that one's rather quick, medium, and then long. So depending on the tempo and depending on the peak of the crescendo, you may have to use one of these three. Okay, and that'll just be part of what you experience. So let's say that for example, the marimba part, you want the kid to be playing this. You want to give him another bar of 16th notes. And then you want him to roll now for a bar on his mounted suspended cymbal. Now, the way that I do this is I go into the playback. Remember, this is strictly just for playback. No one will see this, but I'll show you how we'll put that on his part. All right, so I'm going to find that sound that I want. Alright, so I'm going to go with this one. Alright, so this F. So I'm going to go into the part, and I'm just going to say, let's do a whole note on that. Alright, so don't worry about the notation specifically, but you do need to make sure that it is treated with a cymbal roll notation. So over here on your keypad, I'm going to go over, do here. Okay, so now if I just play back this, strictly just this instrument only, you hear there's a cymbal roll. I can apply dynamics to it to make it a little bit louder, but you'll also hear, and let me go ahead and just put on the metronome for reference. You hear that this may not peak at the right time. If I wanted to, like, maybe peak beat 1 of this bar, so it's actually peaking maybe like a beat early. However, this is what we want the player to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to put this up here in his part now. Now, granted, because I've now copied this and pasted it into its part, it's not going to play back that cymbal roll in his part. You'll hear what it plays back if I'm now going to play just his part. Alright, of course we don't want him to roll on the E, so I'm going to use what's called the inspector. Okay, the inspector, I normally just keep this open when I'm writing. And what I do is I just say, okay, you know what? I highlight the bar that I don't want them to do anything with. Alright, so that's the bar. That's the inspector. And I normally just push down this little push pin that keeps it there. And then I just uncheck play on pass. So then what that does is when it just gets that bar, it just doesn't even play it. So now if I go to this bar, you'll see it's ready to, for him to play again. So I'll just do another bar of 8th notes or quarter notes, whatever. So I'm just going to play back strictly the marimba part, just to show you that it sort of mutes that measure. Alright. However, if I play back all of these files, right? Once again, this is just my playback stave, and this is the stave that the kid sees, the player sees. Alright, so now we sort of have the best of both worlds, a proper playback almost, and the notated part. Right? So you may say, okay, well, how do we get this to play back properly, because it's peaking a little too early? So the options are, if you remember, we could look for any one of these other samples, right? Or what you could do is you could just say, you know what, I just want to move this, and I want to change it. I'm going to make it go 1 beat later. So you could do any number of things. I'm just going to cut this. I'm going to turn this bar into a bar of like this. So now I'm going to make that sample start on beat 2. Alright, I'll go ahead and get rid of this. Go ahead and get rid of this tie. And let's see what happens now as far as the peak. So that's pretty close. So now let's just listen to it all. I'm going to play all the voices. All right, so that's, I think, probably most more appropriate. So now what I do is probably, however you choose to notate this, but I'm probably not going to start the roll at double forte. So I'm just going to go in here, add a little crescendo for the bar, and then I always like to make notation. So I just click on it, do Command T for text above it, and then I just do sus. So that way, as when the kid knows, he's just going along. He sees that symbol roll and he continues along. Same thing applies with like bass drum, tam tam, any number of things, and you'll certainly want to play around with the different rack combos because there are tons and tons of different things. If I can go back here and show you, this, you'll see that there's tons of different things. There's tambourine triangles, wood blocks, suspended cymbals, hand cymbals. So you may decide that you want to use the concert band combo. You may decide that you want to use any number of things. So however you want to utilize them is perfectly fine. What I end up doing is, like, say for example, in this piece I want another suspended cymbal roll here. The great thing is I can just go in here, select this, by pressing Command. I can select just whatever I click on. I'm going to hit copy, and then I'll click over here, and I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to repeat that entire process. And you'll see that if I click on just that bar, it's still not going to play back. So, and I always just go through and just uncheck it just to make sure. But now that I've copied and pasted, we're in business. The good thing also is that, say for example, I want the vibes to do that as well. I can just copy that, put it on to the vibe part, and then we're in business. It's not going to play it. So then the part that the kid sees, once again, is notated properly. So I'll just copy here, paste this in here, and just to sort of continue this. Here's the marimba part. And it looks appropriate. And once again, you can notate things however you'd like, but I always sort of try to over notate this stuff just so that there's no question about what I'm asking for from a composer standpoint. So hopefully that helps out. I'm just going to not save this, and I want to show you an example of a score that has lots of this stuff, so you can really sort of wrap your head around it. So you'll see in this example I've got tons and tons of extra playback staves, once again, that no one will ever see, and then in the student's notated part it says exactly what I'm requesting of them. So once this loads, which will take a minute just because I've got a bunch of instruments in here, you'll be able to get a better example, or see a better example of how this works. All right. All right, so I'm going to move this over. So you'll see, if I were to just show you sort of the front ensemble stuff, you'll see that I've got like a glockenspiel and xylophone part, vibe 1, vibe 2, marimba 1, marimba 2, and a rack part. Now, I have also added, bongos, marimba, drum set, cymbal rack combo A, cymbal rack combo A again, so it's okay to have multiple, and I've got cymbal rack combo B here, tam tam down at the bottom, concert bass drum, tempo blocks at the very bottom, and you'll notice that sometimes the instrument will in fact be correct. Like here's this rack part that's literally one of the rack combos, and most of the sounds I could get I can I can use them as they're in that instrument. But there are certain things, in this glockenspiel part, I've also added just a xylophone stave. So if I want the xylophone to sound, then I'll do that. And the xylophone part, then copy it and paste it into the glockenspiel part, and then just use the inspector and say don't play. You can also do instrument changes, but sometimes they can be a little tricky. Little things like this rack part, you'll see that I added a drum set just for these sounds to sound properly. The tom parts are in fact in that rack part. They don't exist anywhere else, but the crash sound is in the rack part. But I also wanted some reinforcement from the cymbal rack combo, so I'm just going to play the rack part, and you'll actually see what actually plays. So nothing's playing right now because it's all in these playback staves. However, when I get to the tom part, it's perfectly okay to have tons and tons of extra playback staves, and then you'll just have a part that's clean for the kids. And then there's if you're familiar with, say for example, if you're printing just a percussion score, you can select just the instruments that are not playback oriented but just formatting oriented, and then go to layout and say focus on staves. And now your score, I'm just going to switch over to page view. Now you've got just a percussion score where you've focused on just those staves. So hopefully that gives you sort of a quick crash course on this. Something like this would have helped me big time when I started to figure it out, and I still am sort of a novice at it, but it's a system that I've worked out. So let me know if you have any questions. Sorry for rambling, sorry for any confusion, but hopefully this helps.